Welcome to Ethical Hacking for Beginners, Exploiting a Vulnerability. In this video, we're going to take a look at exploiting a vulnerability and interacting with the target. So reconnaissance and scanning are an essential and important stage to finding the weaknesses or the flaws within a system, program, or network. Once we find those vulnerabilities, then we go ahead and we launch an exploit with a payload to penetrate those targets. So let's go ahead and do that now. If you haven't already start your virtual machines for Metasploitable 2 and Kali Linux. Once you're in Kali Linux, we're going to go ahead and start Metasploit. First, we need to start the database. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and type msf console to start Metasploit. Okay, once we have Metasploit started up, we can go ahead and run nmap within Metasploit, and we'll do an A here for OS and version detection on 192.168.111.128, or whatever the IP address is for your virtual machine of Metasploitable 2. So what this is doing is the -A is the switch to do OS and version identification of our target. This can help us find vulnerabilities, and then we can select an appropriate exploit for that vulnerability. You can think of a vulnerability as like a hole, let's say a hole in a puzzle, and the exploit is a piece designed to fit inside that hole. Alright, you'll see our nmap scan is done now. And if we scroll up here, we can see one of the first things here, FTP is open, and it gives us this version right here, VSFTP 2.3.4. So what we're going to do now is we're going to type search VSFTP. And you'll see we do have an exploit for VSFTP, and our version matches, version 2.3.4, which is what our scan set up here from nmap, version 2.3.4. So this exploit should work. So let's scroll down, and we're going to type use exploit Unix FTP VSFTP, and if I just start typing something and I hit tab, it auto completes for me. Okay, so now you can see our prompt changed. We're inside this module for VSFTP backdoor exploit. So we're going to go ahead and type show options. And you can see this particular exploit requires a few different variables. Our host, which is our remote host, and our port. You can see the current setting here for our port is 21, which is correct. We are seeing VSFTP on port 21 in our nmap scan up above. We just need to fill out our host. So we're going to type set our host and our IP address, in my case 192.168.111.128, or whatever your Metasploitable 2 IP address is. Okay, now if I type show options again, you'll notice in our current setting it has been changed to our IP address for Metasploitable 2. You'll also see we have this exploit target ID, which is automatic. We don't need to change anything there. We're good to go. Now if we type show payloads, we'll see what kind of payloads we have to launch after we exploit the target. So you see this particular payload is a command shell for Linux, pretty standard for a Linux operating system. We might have a few more options here for payloads if we were exploiting a Windows system. Some of those options could be maybe a command prompt shell back. We could get a meterpreter shell back, which is another way to interact with hosts. So we only have one payload here. That's going to be our default. We don't have to do anything there. So we're all set. Now we're going to go ahead and type exploit and run our exploit, and I'll do a -J to make it a background job. So it's running it in the background. You'll see we get a banner here confirming once again that the target's running VSFTP 2.3.4, and you'll see here our backdoor service has been spawned. Alright, and we did gain a shell. Alright, so let's go ahead and type sessions L for list. And you'll see we have one shell. Alright, let's try to exploit this again. We'll run it one more time here. Exploit J. So let's type sessions list. See, we still have just the one session. And it looks like we can't run this again since we already have the backdoor bind listener is already open and running. So let's go ahead and interact with this shell. So we're going to type sessions I for interact and then the number or ID, which is 1 in this case. Okay, it says starting an interaction with 1. We are now in a shell with our Metasploitable 2. So let's go ahead and type who am I. You'll see it comes back as root. Now just to make sure we're in our Metasploitable 2 and not Kali Linux, let's do an ifconfig to see what our IP address is. And you'll see mine came up with 192.168.111.128, which is our remote host or my Metasploitable 2 IP address. So I'm in that system right now. I can do an ls and I can see all the files in the directories. I can go to, you know, the web server here. www, here we go. I'm now in the web server files. I can upload files here if I wanted to. I could, you know, download specific files or read specific files, right? So there you go. If I do a cat php.info, phpinfo.php, is a PHP file. You can see we're in this other system here in Metasploitable 2. See, if I type users, you get msfadmin and root. Those are the two users that are in this system. Now we can do, you know, various things here and try to capture data or whatever is our goal for the penetration of the system. Maybe you want to capture specific data. You know, maybe you were asked to gain access to specific data or something like that. Now we could go ahead and do it. So I'll type exit here. You'll see our command session has closed and it died from end of file error. So now if I type sessions L for list, you'll see we have no active sessions. We closed that shell. But I could go ahead again and exploit FTP again and open another shell. But this is just one example of how to run an exploit. I mean, there were other services that we could try to go after and look for exploits on. And we'd go about that the same way. We'd search for the exploit and search for the version, try to match it up, and try to gain access to the box. So some of those commands we used were sessions.l to list our active sessions or our shells, and sessions.i, which we use to interact with the shell or sessions once we got into them. In our next video, we're going to be looking at Armitage.